Welcome to Couch Quarterbacks.
Welcome to the Couch Quarterbacks, folks. This is our Week 6 in review. I am Ben Steinberg, one of the hosts with the most. Joined with me, as always, is Andrew Rochford on a Monday night.
Yep, Monday night, Stein. Like you said, Week 6 recap. A very interesting Week 6. Had some ups and downs, a couple overtime games, but overall, a lot of blowouts this past week.
Yeah, I mean, there might have been two good games, I guess, overall, but just kind of a boring week, and we had to have one eventually. Kind of a week that's not as exciting.
We've been spoiled the past couple weeks with some very, very good Sundays. So,
yeah.
This was eventually coming in the season. This was the first week of the bye week, so maybe that had something to do with it as well, Stein.
Yeah,
but
also we are experiencing, baseball fever here in Atlanta. Yesterday, probably not as much into football as we were to baseball. It's hard to, really give energy to both when we were pretty much focused on baseball.
We kind of had to go back and forth, Stein, as we were paying attention to the 1 o'clock window, started the 4 o'clock window, then had to get into baseball mode, and then kind of put football on the back burner, especially during the primetime game last night.
Also, the Falcons were out on their bye.
No loss.
Yeah, no loss. But also that also kind of goes to at least me not being as into a week, overall. Mm-hmm. Whereas, next week we'll be back with the full. At least, probably full gambit. I mean, there's probably more baseball, though, potentially.
Yeah, there should be more baseball going on. But anyways, let's go into our Week 6 recap. Once again, just to kind of go through the teams on bye. Like we said, the Falcons, the Saints, 49ers, and Jets, those 4 teams on bye. So just 14 games.
You'd think they would do 2 AFC and 2 NFC teams, but
there's no rhyme or reason to it. This next week, there's 6 teams on bye, and then the week after that, there's only 2 teams on bye.
Yeah, and it's kind of a good segue into our first game because poor Dolphins not getting a bye after the London
after
game.
Having to travel across the pond to London, now having to travel back to the U.S.
After an embarrassing loss.
Yeah, 23-20 was the final score. The Jaguars get their first win since Week 1 of 2020, Stein.
Yeah, I mean, I heard on that on Twitter they had the same graphic up, since their first win, which I'm pretty sure was against the Colts.
Yes, it was against the Colts.
It was against the Colts of 2020. And it snaps the losing streak. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the longest losing streak in NFL history was.
It was 26 games for the Bucs back in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, back when the Bucs, all those Bucs fans now, I'm sure they remember those games. But just able to get their first win in their de facto home stadium in London.
Yeah, that's what the Urban Meyer's first win of the season, Trevor Lawrence's first win.
Both of them first NFL wins. Mm-hmm. And then for the Jags, it's their first win and pretty much almost 2 seasons right now, so...
Yeah, and what a way for them to get a win, because, Stein, going into this game, they actually had not made a field goal all season.
Which I think that is ridiculous. How do you not even get close to the red zone?
5 games into the season, you just... I guess you don't get into the red zone, or when you do, you get touchdowns.
Yeah, they're losing, and they're trying to go for it, I guess. And I guess, they have been going through different kickers.
Josh Lambo was their starting kicker. He got injured, I believe, and they had to place him on IR, so they had Matthew Wright is their starting kicker right now, and a 54-yard field goal inside of 4 minutes to tie the game, and then a 53-yard field goal to walk it off as time expires. So a team that didn't have a single field goal make all season, they get 2 from 50-plus in the final 4 minutes.
And that is an NFL record, too, now, which I think this is ridiculous. It's the first time they've had a kicker kick 2 50-plus yarders in the last 4 minutes of a ball game.
Yeah, that is kind of surprising. You would think, I guess there's been 2 field goals before in the final 4 minutes.
But they've been, close ones or maybe just a single deep one.
Hadn't been 50-yarders. But in terms of the Jaguars, just stats from their other guys, Trevor looked decent in this ball game. His first 300-yard passing effort in his NFL career, had 1 touchdown in the ball game and 1 turnover, lost a fumble. But overall, just another positive performance from him.
Yeah, James Robinson on the ground doing pretty good. 101 yards from scrimmage, combining passing, catching, and rushing. Kind of looking probably they wasted that ETN pick again,
Yeah, and after the first couple games of the season where people kind of pressed the panic button on James Robinson, he's really coming to his own in the past couple games. So
Yeah.
just another great performance from him.
Marvin Jones Jr.
Yeah, only had 1 catch last week. Now 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. And this ball game is their leading receiver. So
yeah, that was my that was my 9-20 switch in fantasy to add Marvin Jones because I was just like, yeah, what the hell,
they are playing the Dolphins defense, who has been just as bad as the Jaguars defense this season. But speaking of the Dolphins, Tua, his return in this game in London, overall looked decent in the ball game. Had to throw the ball 47 times, was 33 of 47, 329 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had 1 interception in Manstein. It was a bad interception. I don't know if you saw a video of it, but there was no Dolphins receiver within 10 to 15 yards of it, and it was one of those things for a defender where he was so open and there was no one near him, where he almost ended up dropping the sure thing interception. Kind of bobbled it a little bit when he came down with it.
Yeah,
but,
interesting. Also, Jacoby Brissett completed a pass or 2 in this game as well.
Yeah, I don't know if if Tua ended up leaving with injury, or they just brought him in as a change of pace type thing.
Yeah,
or
maybe
what.
we're going back to Jacoby Brissett is our deep throwing quarterback they did in Indy.
With Phillip Rivers, but overall, like I said, Tua, a great game for him. I don't think he had any setbacks with the rib injuries. Didn't seem like he had any limitations with the rib injury either. So just a decent performance from him, even though they weren't able to get the win on the stat sheet.
Some receivers for the Dolphins are stepping up. Mike Gesicki, after a decent week last week, really had a great game. Didn't get the touchdown, but 8 for 115 for a tight end. Those are numbers you can always play with.
Yeah, that's what they were missing. 3 of their top 4 wide receivers. The one wide receiver they did have with Jalen Waddle, 10 catches, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. So great performance for him after he had a couple bad weeks.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns, even though despite only 70 yards. Because we do have 2 touchdowns and 10 receptions. Your yards could be up.
Well, that's when, even in the game when Brissett was at quarterback and he had the 13 targets or whatever, 12 receptions, it was for 60, 70 yards or something like that. He's almost turning into the new Jarvis Landry when he was back with Miami a couple years ago, where it's just all short.
Everything's going to be in the flats to him.
Yeah, just everything's short, PPR-wise. You're going to love it that way, but in terms of actual NFL production, it may not be the most glamorous stat line.
Not the best route rusher, route runner, I should say. In terms of the Dolphins' run game, that's kind of been a mixed bag. Gaskin had a good week last week.
Yeah, mainly receiving though.
Not showing up this week.
Yeah, that's what Malcolm Brown was their leading rusher in this ball game. Ahmed got touches, Gaskin of course as well, but that's kind of been the name of the game for the Dolphins all season, is just not really having a run game at all, and it definitely showed in this ball game. So
defense looking disappointing overall, and that kind of leads me to my question, Roach. Before I say the bottom line of this game, do you think Flores is pretty much has the hottest seat right now?
I don't know if he has the hottest seat, but I would definitely say that he is on the hot seat, just because the Dolphins last year really exceeded expectations with having that 10-win season, just missing out on the playoffs. And after having those high draft picks, you get Jalen Waddle. They had one of the better draft classes coming in, and now you posted a 1-5 start to the season. You get funny? Tua back, so they have a chance to turn it around. What?
If this kind of stays the course and they're a top 5 pick, you know who their pick belongs to?
Who?
The Eagles.
Really?
Yeah, they traded up with the Eagles last year.
Oh man, so they don't even have their first round pick this year. What a year for them to start out their season 1-5. Like I said, they had to have had playoff aspirations, and so now not even having your first round pick.
Yeah, you think the Texans are the dumb team, usually in these kind of trades.
But I guess not anymore. But yeah, Stein, go ahead with
bottom
the bottom line.
Jags suck, Dolphins suck. I think if these guys play each other 10 times, this is a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I mean, it's overall just kind of a pretty boring ball game.
Even though it was close, and it was one of the closer ones of the day.
Hey, just because it's a close ball game doesn't mean it can't be boring.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
it's
a good game.
When we get to the Seahawks and Steelers at the end of the show, then that will definitely be another example of that.
Yeah. But shout out to London. I'm pretty sure we're done with the London game. So
I think
thank
so.
God.
I think it was just the 2 back-to-back weeks.
Thank God.
All right, no more 9:30
No more setting my
alarm
lineup
clock.
on Sunday night or Saturday nights.
Yeah, but let's hop into the 1 o'clock window. The first game we'll talk about is the NFC North battle. The Packers beat the Bears 24-14. Packers moving to 5-1 on the season.
Yeah, I don't think that score really tells the whole story. Packers were in the driver's seat this whole game. Bears defense did play pretty well and actually held Aaron Rodgers kind of in check. but you really don't need much offense to outperform this Bears offense.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the struggles that they've had this season, especially since Justin Fields has taken over at quarterback. So Aaron Rodgers only 195 passing yards and only threw the ball 23 times, but still had 3 total touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown where he ran into the end zone and started yelling at some of the Bears fans. I don't remember
that was
what
been the
exactly
story. I own you. I
Mm-hmm.
I effing own you. All that stuff. It was some hot mics probably, and just some great sound bits from there. And those are going to be some T-shirts, for sure.
Yeah, so a big win on the Packers side. Aaron Rodgers, we mentioned in the preview, has just owned the Bears overall in his career. Justin Fields, the other quarterback in the ball game, 16 of 27 for 174 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Finally started to use his legs a little bit in this ball game, 6 rushes for 43 yards, so definitely his best rushing performance so far this season.
Yeah,
but
was able to get a first down or 2 rushing.
I was going to say, but once again, just really the Bears' offense was just kind of moving in slow motion this whole game.
One of these days, he'll have more than 200 yards passing, and they'll have better completions. I mean, the Bears just don't have any receivers really, and I know you want to say Mooney and Robinson.
I mean, it's not that they don't have any receivers. I think it's the fact that their offensive line is so bad, and then their offensive scheme as well has just been awful.
Yeah.
Like Matt Nagy started out calling plays and stuff early on this season, gave it off to the offensive coordinator to call plays, and it really hasn't been much better. They had success when they did that last season. Like the Bears made the playoffs, but it just hasn't correlated this year.
One thing that has been consistent, though, is with the running game and Khalil Herbert really stepping in.
The third-string running back almost had a 100-yard rushing performance.
Yeah, 19 for 97 and a tutty. Just great game for him. He's going to be a huge waiver pickup if he wasn't already.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Damian Williams should be back and off the COVID list next week, but I wouldn't.
You got to think that they're going to give him give him his touches.
I was going to say even in last week's game, he had 18 carries. He had more. He ended up with more carries or just about the same number of touches as Damian Williams. So definitely will still have some involvement in this offense until David Montgomery comes back.
Yeah. Also, real quickly for the Packers, David Bakhtiari will be back.
He tore his ACL back in December, and so he's been designated off of IR, so he's got that 3-week window where he can come back. He's supposed to practice this upcoming week, so that's definitely a good sign for Aaron Rodgers and just the whole offense to have one of their stalwarts on the offensive line that should be back pretty soon.
So, bottom line from this game, the Bears really can't shake Rodgers. I think that's 26 and 6 or something was the record.
I think it's 22 and 6. He's got an amazing record against the Bears.
Even despite not an amazing effort by the Packers offense, Packers aren't I don't think the Packers are going to be world beaters right now. And
I mean, they are 5-1 this season.
That's true, but we still got that bad taste in our mouth, I feel, from week 1, even despite all the wins that they've had since. And I still don't think the Bears are terrible just because of their defense.
I mean, the Bears, I think, will kind of just hover around 500 this whole season.
Yeah, and their defense could keep them in a game or 2.
Yeah, so sitting at 3-3 right now, they just seem like there's those couple teams that just are destined for 8-9, 9-8. I think the Bears kind of fall into that category.
That you can still get 500 somehow.
Yep. So let's move on to the next game, which was the Bengals beating the Lions. The Lions staying with no wins on the season, 34-11 the final score.
Yes, now with the Jags winning, the Lions are the remaining winless team in the NFL, falling to 0-6. And just poor Lions just didn't even score, didn't even have a chance to score. They got their field goal halfway through the fourth quarter. It was just a pity and a garbage time stuff.
Yeah, that's what didn't score at all until the fourth quarter of this ball game. I mean, the Bengals have definitely been exceeding expectations so far this season, with them moving to 4-2 on the season now. But yeah, the Lions, there's worse teams out there than the Lions, but it just stinks for them because of just kind of how the schedule's fallen. They've had a couple heartbreaking losses as well, so just to remain winless on the season, and Stein will have to keep track of and see if we have a 0-17 team in the first year of the 17-game season.
Some team eventually will do it. I'm sure that if we played a 17-game season in that in the 0-16 Browns or maybe in the 0-16 Lions a second time, and that's an interesting fact, was Dan Campbell was actually on the 0-16 Lions
as
a player. So the fact he could be the first 0-17 coach, which I don't think either of us think they're going to go 0-17.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just so heartbreaking. Like if you were a part of it as a player and a coach, like this is so disheartening. Like if you had to go through that. So hopefully the Lions will eventually get a win later on in the season and can get that one in the win column. But for the Bengals in this ball game, Joe Burrow was great, 3 touchdowns. He had an interception in this ball game, but overall just had a great stat line. Joe Mixon, who returned back to his full workload, had been battling an ankle or knee injury the past couple weeks.
Not great rushing.
Yeah, 18 carries for 59 yards rushing, but as a receiver was where he did a lot of damage. 5 catches, 59 yards, and a receiving touchdown. I think he was actually their second leading receiver overall in this ball game.
Yeah, and you got to think with that, 18 for 59. That's a lot of attempts where they're up by a lot and they're just going to be running, until legs come off.
I mean, I think they pulled him late in the ball game. I know Burrow got pulled late, so there was a couple other guys, Chris Evans, Travion Williams, some of the backup running backs got a lot of work.
Evans had a catch or two, and then Jamar Chase, just continuing to dazzle. Didn't get that touchdown, but 4 for 97.
He had another long catch in this ball game.
Yeah, another one
53 yards or something like that.
Another one where he's burning, and he's looking like easily right now the lead car for rookie of the year.
Yeah, and then even the number one wide receiver in this offense is T. Higgins, kind of had a little bit of a down game in this one, once again returning from injury, and Tyler Boyd only had 1 catch in the ball game.
But it's good to see this Bengals team kind of playing with house money as they have been. Finishing up with the Lions though, Hawkinson after some duds really kind of looked good in this one, 8 for 74. So they have some bright spots, and then DeAndre Swift, 18 touches for 67 yards and a touchdown in garbage time.
I was going to say a nice garbage time, like 1-yard touchdown run with a couple minutes left on the clock. But, I mean, it's hard to try and pick some bright spots from this Lions team.
Yeah,
so
Golf's been just lower average.
I think he's had 3 or 4 straight games with just barely over 200 yards passing, where it's 202 yards, 203 yards passing. So
he's been in the lower tier of quarterbacks.
But we do have a double revenge game next week, as it's going to be the Lions going to LA to face off against the Rams. So Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff both facing off against their former
That's
teams.
going to be a tough time for them to try to get their first win.
Hey, I mean, it would at least make a great headline for the Lions to get their first win in a game like that, like Jared Goff against McVay and all of his old buddies. So
exactly. Bottom line from this game, Lions are bad, but they would probably beat the Jags. I think if the Lions play the Jags or something.
I think that they're better than the Jags, better than the Texans. Just trying to think of some of the other one-loss teams that they could actually beat. So
yeah, maybe not the Colts. Well, the Colts have 2 anyways.
Yeah, no, I think they would lose to the Colts. But there's a couple other. They could probably be the Giants. I mean, the Giants don't have anyone healthy on their team.
Probably beat
the Jets as well. Yeah, well, we're not thinking of them.
There's teams that they can beat that just hopefully that they'll have later on their schedule. Probably games we won't want to watch, but hopefully they can get that done.
for Detroit fans and for the Lions' sake.
Also, Bengals looking good. Now that the Browns are kind of slipping a little bit, could that also be a potential time for the Bengals to take that wild card spot?
I think they definitely have a chance with the extra wild card team to kind of sneak into.
This AFC
hunt.
North is turning into a dogfight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with the Bengals being at 4-2, I think they're definitely on their way to just being in the hunt for a wild card spot.
Yeah. All right, moving on to 2 teams we actually just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The Texans taking on the Colts. Colts take this one handedly. Finally get, as a 2-4 team. They don't even seem like a 2-4 team, but just dominating 31-3.
Yeah, I mean, obviously by the score, this was never close, but something that I thought was
not
interesting.
Not even garbage time close.
Yeah, was the Texans actually ran 74 plays in this ball game compared to the Colts only running 48 plays, but then overall where it actually mattered, the Colts had 35 more total yards than the Texans in this ball game, so that's really all you need to know and why the score ended up being 31-3. But Carson Wentz, another good game. He had 2 touchdown passes, no turnovers. Jonathan Taylor, also a great game in this one. 14 carries, turned that into 145 yards, so 10 yards a carry. Yeah, and then 2 touchdowns.
Another good week for JT, as he started off really slow, but in the past 2 or 3 weeks, he's kind of come into his own. Mm-hmm. And then good to see T.Y. Hilton back on the field, leading all the receivers with 4 for 80. Not amazing, but it's good to see a guy who is winning injured and also getting up there in age, kind of doing what he needs to do and could really maybe add a spark for this Colts team.
Yeah, that's what it, once again, kind of, because it was a blowout game, Carson Wentz only threw the ball 25 times. So even though it's the 480 receiving line was leading the way, there wasn't a whole lot of passes to go around. So, but like you said, it was good for T.Y. to kind of come back and maybe hopefully help this Colts offense.
He had one maybe really nice deep catch that not super deep.
It ended up setting up a touchdown. Yeah. So, but I feel bad for the Texans because T.Y. in his career has been known to just absolutely torch the Texans every time he faced off against him.
So of course he comes back.
The Texans fans had to have hated seeing that he was going to be active for this ball game. But speaking of the Texans, Davis Mills in this ball game, not as good as he was last week against the Patriots. Threw the ball 43 times, 29 completions for 243 yards. No touchdowns on the day, and then also threw 2 interceptions. Brandon Cooks started cooking.
Back to his usual stat line. This is the stat lines to be expected from the Texans.
13 targets, 9 catches for 89 yards. So still able to find some great production even in this just absolutely awful offense. But some good news for Texans fans: Tyrod Taylor is now considered day-to-day. So he at least has a chance to play next week. From everything that I'm reading, it seems like he'll probably be out for one more week, and then that following game, 2 weeks from now, is when he's going to be back out there. But we're getting closer and closer to a Tyrod Taylor return. Obviously, the quarterback that got them their one win this season, so that's kind of a bright spot if you can find one for this Texans team.
Yeah, I'm going to say the quarterback they've looked the best with. Mm-hmm. And then finishing the news of this game, Paris Campbell injured his foot. And today, Frank Reich was saying that it called the injury significant, which is never good to see that.
Yeah, it didn't put a timetable on it, didn't rule out it being a season-ending injury, but it's just a tough break for a guy that's been in this league. This is now his 3rd season, and he's only played in 14 games so far in his 2.5-year career now. Just has always been battling injuries, so just very unfortunate to see from a very young and promising prospect when he first got drafted to the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to get build their receiving core, with Pittman and
right as T.Y. Hilton comes back too, so it's like a 1-for-1 trade-off.
Exactly. Bottom line, Colts I think are back. Back-to-back good weeks. I don't think we're ready to say they're contenders or anything yet, but it's really hard to play bad against the Texans, right now.
Exactly, and it definitely, the Colts need to win these ball games where they're playing these teams that are worse than them to try and get back in this AFC South battle and catch up to the Titans.
Yeah. Speaking of playing teams that are worse than you, Rams go into MetLife and just impose their will, 38-11. A scoregami, have you?
Oh yeah, it was a scoregami
against the Giants. The Giants fall to 1-5, and the Rams complete others 180 and 5-1. Just opposite teams right now.
Yeah, that's what. Once again, the theme of this week will be blowouts, and more blowouts. So this just kind of goes par for the course. The Rams outscored the Giants 28-0 in the second quarter, and that was pretty much all she wrote for the ball game. Matt Stafford was great in this one, 4 touchdown passes and just 1 interception. Darrell Henderson, 107 scrimmage yards. He had 2 touchdowns in the ball game, 1 rushing touchdown and 1 receiving touchdown. So a good performance from him. And then Cooper Kupp, 9 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. That seems to be the norm for him. He's got 7 touchdowns so far in the season in just 6 games, and he's had 3 games this season with multiple touchdowns. So we keep mentioning he's definitely been a favorite target for Matt Stafford.
He did have a down week either last week or the week before, but finally
his down week where it was still 8 catches for 75 yards.
Exactly, but now getting some touchdowns and getting back to top in the league for receiving. On the Giants side of the ball, it was just a rough day for Daniel Jones.
That's what obviously had the scary concussion last week. He was able to be cleared and play in this ball game, but definitely not a great performance. 29 for 51, 242 yards. Didn't have a touchdown pass. 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles. So he lost one of them, and then he was sacked 4 times in this ball game. So filling up the stat sheet in the wrong ways.
4 turnovers and 4 sacks. If you're trying to pass the ball 51 times and you only get 240 yards off that,
and don't get a passing touchdown.
Yeah, I mean you're doing something wrong. I know you're missing some weapons. But still,
Yeah, geez. I mean, these Giants have just been decimated with injuries, and they lost some more people in this ball game. Kadarius Toney, who had his career week last week, left after the first drive. He had 3 catches for 36 yards and then left after the first drive with an ankle injury. He aggravated it from the week prior. So it led to Dante Pettis. Yeah, remember Dante Pettis from years back? I'm pretty sure he was a
from Washington.
Former first-round pick.
He had Niners.
He ended up having 11 targets in this ball game, which if Dante Pettis is getting 11 targets for your team, then you're probably going to be on the losing end of the scoreboard.
Yeah, and then running the ball, Booker taking over for Saquon. 16 touches for 69 yards. Not terrible, but didn't get in the end zone or anything.
Yeah, Elijah Penny siphoned a touchdown from him, their fullback.
Yeah. Sterling Shepard, though, was pretty good. 14 targets and only caught 10 of them for 76, which, still is serviceable for a guy who also can't seem to stay healthy.
Yeah, if you were watching the game, he definitely caught a lot of those passes in garbage time. But, as Daniel Jones' number 1 target, definitely benefited from them being down in the ball game and trying to play catch up. So we'll see who the Giants actually have at receiver coming out next week, because Darius Slayton still misses ball game. Kenny Galladay was out. C.J. Board, one of their other wide receivers, apparently had a pretty gruesome arm injury. So it's just a complete rotation with the receivers that they have here. And then Saquon, obviously, we're not sure if he's going to be healthy enough to be back out there next week.
If it's going to even matter, for him.
Probably on the wrong side of questionable, at least for another week with that ankle injury.
Bottom line, Rams kind of back on schedule.
Yeah.
Looked a little bit shaky that we saw, but Giants, I like to say, I think they're drowning right now.
Yeah.
Whether it's in injuries or just bad luck, they're just kind of in lost in the middle of the ocean.
Well, and then speaking of hot seats, Joe Judge might kind of
That's true. Joe Judge is a little bit
well.
on the hot seat in his second season. All right, moving on to the Chiefs taking on the Washington football team. The Chiefs able to win 31-13 against the Washington football team on Sean Taylor Day. An interesting kind of interesting game, because the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes wasn't great.
Yeah, no, if you look at the first half, the Chiefs were actually down 13-10 at halftime, and they were able to outscore the Washington football team 21-0 in the second half to take it 31-13. So, yeah, it's still not a Patrick Mahomes type performance that we are accustomed to seeing. 32 of 47, 397 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 2 interceptions, though. And at halftime, he didn't have a touchdown pass and had both those interceptions in the first half. So just once again, we really haven't seen that elite Patrick Mahomes that we've been accustomed to the past couple seasons.
Definitely has had his struggles this year and just has not looked dominant. Some of them have been tipped passes,
but he's tied for second in the NFL right now with 8 interceptions, tied with Trevor Lawrence, a couple of rookies, tied with Trevor Lawrence at 8 interceptions, and then behind Zach Wilson, who had a bye this week and one less game, he's got 9 interceptions.
Yeah, so just interesting to see that. I guess he is human, that goes to show, and maybe he's a guy who's allowed to have this kind of performance, because they're going to need some adversity. They're going to be challenged in this AFC right now.
Well, and I guess the important thing was they did end up getting the win. It's nothing special against this Washington football team who has been disappointing this season.
Yeah.
Darrell Williams, who's been filling in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, had 21 carries, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns, so a great fill-in spot for him. And then their 2 top receivers, Travis Kelce, 8 catches for 99 yards, and then Tyreek Hill, 9 for 76 and a touchdown. But both of them kind of dealing with some injuries. Tyreek came into the game questionable with a quad injury, gutted it out, but still kind of been dealing with that injury. And then Travis Kelce at one point kind of came up holding his forearm, wrist, and missed a couple plays in the ball game, but then came back in. So definitely something to monitor during practice this week to see how much he'll practice going into next week's ball game.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's been a little bit shaken up also on offense for them. They just haven't been able to have a complete game thus far, at least as of lately. I guess the Browns might have been more of a complete game.
I feel like there's at least Mahomes is kind of spreading the ball around a little bit more. You have some more no-name guys where they make a catch and you're like, wait, who's this guy? He plays for the Chiefs?
Oh,
what?
Exactly. Now for Washington, just kind of the same thing. Even against a bad Chiefs defense, Heineke, only 182 yards with a touchdown and an interception to boot. No rushes which is ridiculous.
Yeah, which is weird for Heineke because he's been known as kind of like that rushing quarterback and really being able to bring that dual threat type of play to his game, the difference between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick. So no rushes is definitely concerning in this ball game for him. Terry McLaurin, his number one receiver, came in banged up. He only had 4 catches for 28 yards. So once again, a big reason why this Washington football team offense couldn't get anything going. And then also their starting running back, Antonio Gibson, was in and out of the game. He's been battling that shin injury for weeks now. He's getting an MRI on it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they finally sit him out for at least a game just to try and get that healthy because he's been playing through it and trying to gut through it the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so bottom line from this game, Chiefs kind of able to get back in the win column after a disappointing loss. And despite some of the errors that they even had themselves, and I just feel like Washington needs a bye.
They could definitely use one. That once again we've been talking about them and the Dolphins as being 2 teams that have been very bad this season.
Incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, and definitely underperformed. So Washington football team could definitely benefit from having a bye.
Yes. All right, moving on to an actual close game. Finally,
the one close game in the 1 o'clock window.
Yeah, and that was the Vikings, who were able to beat the Panthers in Charlotte, but it took them to overtime to beat them. And this game was just a classic back and forth kind of battle, and you really thought either team could win when it came down to the end.
Yeah, that's what the Vikings had the lead late in this ball game, but a good job by the Panthers to have a drive going down the field and get a touchdown late to force overtime. They outscored the Vikings 11-3. In the fourth quarter to force overtime. So just a great comeback to even get set up overtime and give them a chance to win in the ball game. But they didn't win the coin toss, and the Vikings took their first drive down the field and ended up getting a touchdown.
It happens. And the name of the game for the Vikings was Kirk Cousins actually looking good against a pretty stout Panthers defense. He 33 of 48, 373 yards, 3 TDs. Probably one of the best quarterbacks of the week, easy.
Yeah, that's what remember Cousins had 2 straight bad performances just
average performances
on the stat sheet, and this is really going back to his first couple weeks now with having the 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, almost 400 yards passing, so definitely getting back on track for him. Dalvin returned from injury in this ball game.
What a great game for Dalvin.
Yeah, 29 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown. And then the number 1 receiver, Adam Thielen, 11 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. So the leading running back and leading receiver for this team. And Justin Jefferson had a decent performance as well, 8 catches for 80 yards. Also lost a fumble early in the ball game.
Yeah. Conklin and Osborne also a little bit of contributions to this offense.
Osborne had that game-winning 37-yard touchdown in overtime.
Yeah, so, you got to like this Vikings offense, and even their defense came out to play against Sam Darnold, who just another bad performance. After last week's dud, back-to-back duds for him.
Yeah, Darnold has been on definitely a slide over the past couple weeks. So in this ball game, 17 of 41, just a lot of passes and not a lot of completions.
That's a gross completion percentage.
Yeah, just 207 yards, 1 touchdown on that final drive of regulation. Also had an interception and lost a fumble. So the stat line could have looked a lot worse for him, but he was 5 for 10, 83 yards and a touchdown on that final drive to force overtime. So
still only 50% completions.
Like I said, still could have looked a lot worse if he didn't have that drive to force overtime. Over the past 3 games, Stein, only a 42% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions over those last 3 games, kind of going back to those Jets numbers that he had those couple years there.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it. We said that we think these might just be a flash in the pan, kind of back to his Jets days, but it's starting to, 3 games becomes a trend, that becomes a habit. And
yeah, exactly. And he's definitely been the biggest guy in terms of missing Christian McCaffrey and hoping that he would be back, but he ended up getting placed on IR, I think, after we ended up filming our last show, so he's was thought to have been close to coming back and almost playing in last week's game, but then he ended up not practicing on Thursday and got placed on IR on Friday or Saturday, so he's going to be out for the next 3 ball games. So already missed the last 2 ball games, so this is once again kind of looking like a lost season for McCaffrey, the 2nd year in a row after he had been so durable.
Yeah, and then Chuba Hubbard, coming in relief duty. finally gets in the touchdown, but just is nothing like what McCaffrey's able to bring to the offense.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to replicate Christian McCaffrey and his production and meaning to an offense. So 16 for 61 and a touchdown for Hubbard, so still a decent performance. And then one loss for the Vikings, Patrick Peterson, a hamstring injury placed on IR, so that was a big free agent acquisition for this Vikings team. He's going to be out for at least the next 3 games.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be somebody that they're going to miss. But Vikings seem to be trending and winning some more close games as of late.
I feel like the Vikings are in just about every single ball game that they've played in this season.
Yeah,
they're once again kind of like the Bears, where they're going to be like around 500 all season. They're back up to 3-3, but they're once again the potential to be 8-1 is definitely like that. That's got Vikings written all over it.
Oh, exactly. So bottom line, this was the most exciting game of 1:00, and you got to say the Vikings just did more right when it came down to it, and the difference in the quarterbacks, really.
And they also won the coin toss.
Yeah,
that was definitely a big difference maker too.
Luck, I guess, plays a little bit, and then Darnold, like we said, is starting his snide. So I fantasy wise going forward, just be wary.
Yeah, hopefully the Panthers will be able to get back on track next week. So let's move on to the next game, and that's going to be what we thought was probably going to be the best game in the 1:00 window, but ended up being a complete blowout. The Ravens beating the Chargers 34-6. Ravens moving to 5-1 on the season. Chargers falling to 4-2. And like I said, Stein, this was supposed to be the most exciting game. And man, the Ravens just got back to their running ways and ran all over the Chargers.
Yeah, and we kind of knew that the Chargers weren't as strong on their running defense.
Yeah, they were one of the worst rush defenses in the league, and were allowing like the most yards per game overall.
Yeah, so we knew that this game could have gone up there in the score, but we didn't expect the
offense to just lay a complete dud.
Yeah, for really for Herbert to really just lay an egg, honestly, and just
especially,
not like.
I guess they scored all their points in that Browns game, Stein. So they put up 47 in that one. They didn't save some of the scoring for this week's ball game.
Yeah, despite the Ravens' win and their rush attack, Lamar was not great passing the ball, which we know that, but he also wasn't spectacular running the ball either.
Yeah, that's 19 of 27, 167 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions in the ball game, and then 8 carries for 51 yards, so very efficient on that front. But Lamar, who had like back-to-back 300-yard passing games, had shown to be at least an improved passer from years past. I mean, it didn't end up mattering. They still ended up getting a blowout
they didn't
win.
need to.
Just overall, if you're a Lamar fantasy owner or just seeing his stat line, you're just not impressed by his performance.
Yeah, and then Rashad Bateman, his first game, 4 for 29 on 6 targets, which was tied for the team high in his first game. So good to see him get out there. We hope that he can combine with Andrews and Hollywood Brown to actually give this Ravens a potent passing offense. But like we said, the name of this game was the rush offense, and what really highlight that was pretty much all starting running backs. Except for your boy Williams.
Yeah, he was
Tyson Williams just can't get in the end zone.
For whatever reason, he was a healthy scratch in this ball game. As they keep wanting to go with the veteran running backs, if you want to call them that. But
the three-headed monster of Latavius Murray. I was about to say Freddie Freeman.
Devontae Freeman. We'll get back into NFL
I know. And Le'Veon Bell all got a rush touchdown. And then total, the team had 187 rush yards. Did they have anyone who was over 100 yards rushing? So they did back-to-back weeks.
I think. Well, I think it was Devontae and Latavius both had 50 to 55 somewhere.
But they were just spreading the ball around.
Yeah, but as a team, for a 100-yard rushing performance, they get back to 1 on the scorecard, so they can start another streak overall. But going over to the Chargers. Like we said, just obviously with 6 points on the scoreboard, the offense just really couldn't get anything going.
Yeah.
Herbert, just 195 pass yards on 39 attempts. Did have a touchdown, only 1 touchdown, though, and an interception. And the worst part was he was their leading rusher with 2 carries for 12 yards.
Yeah, Austin Eckler just completely disappeared.
Yeah, 6 carries for 7 yards for him. Did have 4 catches for 48 yards to somewhat save his fantasy performance. But everyone's numbers were down in this ball game. Keenan Allen just 5 for 50, leading the receivers. and Mike Williams 2 catches for 27 yards. So
yeah.
the Chargers under Brandon Staley, first-year head coach, has been known to be a little bit ballsy, Stein, with going for it on 4th down and everything, and it's nice when it's working, like in that Browns game when it worked for them a lot, but in this ball game they were just 1 for 4 on 4th down, and icing on the cake was in the third quarter when it was, I think, a 24-6 ball game. He ended up going for it on his own 19-yard line, and they ended up throwing an incomplete pass, and it set up another score for the Ravens. So, like I said, you're just trying for something desperate when you're down by that much, trying to get back into the ball game. But obviously, it didn't work out, and they ended up, like I said, losing this one pretty bad.
Paying the piper in that case. Bottom line, the Ravens got finally a legit win, I would say. I know the Chiefs is also a legit win, but that one was a lot closer, pretty close.
Yeah, they got their first blowout victory.
Yeah, because
pretty much every game this season has been a close, down to the wire contest.
Exactly. And I know we said in our preview show, we said the Chargers, at the season ended last week, Chargers would have had the number 1 seed in the AFC. Maybe the Chargers aren't as good as we thought they were.
I mean, I think we kind of judged them off of the great back and forth battle performance that they had against the Browns. I think they're definitely still a great team and will challenge the Chiefs for the best team in the AFC West and going to be one of the best teams overall in the AFC. But just overall, just had a bad week in this one. Hopefully they will respond going into next week.
All right, now to the 4 o'clock slate where we only had 3 games for a change instead of the usual 4.
Yeah, just 1 4:05, 2 4:25.
Yeah, so the 4:05 was on paper supposed to be another great game, which was the Cardinals taking on the Browns in Cleveland. Cardinals imposed their will, 37-14, and move on to 6-0, still undefeated.
Yeah, and the thing that made this one even more impressive was they were battling that COVID outbreak, and it was reported after we filmed on Friday that Kingsbury and then their offensive coordinator both ended up getting either COVID or were close contact or whatever, so they weren't able to be at the game. Kingsbury is the guy that calls the plays, so you figure the offensive coordinator would have been the next in command, so to still be able to have such a great performance, get the victory, and then have such a dominating win as well is just even more impressive for this Cardinals team.
Yeah, Kyler gets back on track after some poor performances. 20 of 30, 229. So not amazing in total yards, but 4 touchdowns. That's pretty much what we saw from Kyler at the beginning of the season to give him MVP kind of status.
Yeah, and then only 7 rushes for 6 yards in this ball game. So didn't even have to do it with his legs overall. So that's what makes it even more impressive. Not really known as being just the true pocket passing quarterback. So the 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, not having to do much rushing, just kind of a different type of Kyler than we're used to seeing, but still overall worked for him.
Yeah, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, both contributing with a touchdown, and then DeAndre Hop with 2 of his own.
Yeah, it just shows how impressive this Cardinals offense is and just all the weapons that they have on this team.
Yeah.
Between those 3 guys, the 2 running backs of Edmonds and James Conner, not even mentioning Rondale Moore, and then adding Zach Ertz to this potent offense.
He wasn't allowed to play because the Eagles had already played, which I thought was hilarious.
I texted one of my buddies right after I saw that trade, and I was like, wait a second. Since they played on Thursday night, could he play in this game on Sunday? But yeah, the NFL has a rule where you can't play in 2 games in the same week, so.
Yeah. So now to the Browns, who are just starting to get a little bit of injuries for everyone on offense. And
I don't know. I guess they got too close to the Giants or something like that.
Yeah,
the
they must have.
Contagious.
I don't think they played the Giants, but if they did, there's got to be some injury bug where Baker, 19 of 28 for 234, 2 touchdowns and a pick, but 2 fumbles, and sacked 5 times. Also, his arm was in a sling reportedly, getting an MRI. It's not looking great for Baker right now.
Yeah, I don't know if he aggravated that labrum injury from back in week 2 where it came out last week that he's been playing through it or what, but I think it's once again his non-throwing shoulder that's injured. So yeah, he's getting an MRI on it. They're awaiting the results of that. And probably worst case scenario for the Browns is after this game and having all the injuries, they got to play on Thursday Night Football this upcoming week against the Broncos. So having to have a short week and get these teams to turn around. But it's the Broncos.
Yeah, but it is a tough defense with the Broncos. We let's be honest. Kareem, in a game that was supposed to be a great game for him, with Chubb supposed to be
Chubb,
out.
so he was going to get
no
all
handcuff.
the touches in the backfield.
17 touches for only 78 yards from scrimmage. So not like what people maybe were predicting without that touchdown. And then also Kareem gets hurt too.
Yeah, and his is definitely a more significant injury, injuring his calf in the fourth quarter. I saw a report where he could miss up to 6 weeks with the injury, so definitely
IR.
Going to go on the IR, so at least the next 3 games he's going to be out, but if it's worst case scenario, it could be out for up to 6 weeks, so definitely a big loss from the running back position, especially if Nick Chubb can't come back on this short turnaround. You might see some Demetric Felton and Dearness Johnson as their 2 leading running backs in this offense. So definitely another big loss for them.
Yeah.
And then one more. Let's just keep the dominoes falling. Is Odell Beckham in this ballgame finished with 5 catches for 79 yards, but he injured his shoulder in the ballgame. You saw him on the sideline, seemed to be in some very noticeable pain. Ended up coming back in later in the ballgame, but it's worth noting that they officially listed him as did not practice on Monday ahead of the Thursday night game because they have to put out an injury report on Monday. So all these guys that we mentioned, including Nick Chubb, were listed as did not participate in Monday's practice. So very concerning, like I said.
For that Thursday matchup too. Jedrick Wills has been hurt. It's just everyone seems to be getting hurt.
And then especially these last 2 games with how the Browns' defense has performed with the 47 against the Chargers, 37 in this one against the Cardinals. Obviously 2 very elite offenses that they're facing, but still this Browns defense that was supposed to be one of the tops in the league, making some additions in their secondary, especially.
Yeah, giving up 80 points in like 2 weeks pretty much. Bottom line, Cards, I thought they were going to be struggling, but they're rolling, Roach. They're rolling.
That's what we were talking about, how they, after the game against the 49ers, so there might be some dents in them, but definitely had that big statement victory.
And now they get Zach Ertz to kind of replace, Max. So that's going to help. And then Browns' injuries could really cause them to slip out of contention.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the severity of some of these injuries, definitely on the offense.
Yeah, if Chunt's not firing on all cylinders, they could fall.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the offense isn't rolling on all cylinders. The defense, like we mentioned, just hasn't been performing. So, I mean, I think that the Browns can turn it around, but it's definitely going to rely on some of the injuries of some of their important players.
All right, now to the 425 games and a AFC West battle between the Raiders and the Broncos. The head coachless
3-0 teams.
Yeah, the head coachless Raiders move on to 4-2, beating out the Broncos in a 34-24 game. And the Raiders were kind of in control, so the final score was really, look closer than the game was.
Yeah, the Broncos once again getting like some garbage time touchdowns.
They've been the champion of garbage time, touchdowns the past few weeks.
Yeah, that's what. So Rich Bisaccia, as the interim head coach, gets his first victory. Like you said, the Raiders really controlling this one the whole way. Derek Carr, like Kirk Cousins, kind of got back onto the performance that he had the first couple games of the season. 341 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, and then on the ground, the 2 running backs, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, both had rushing scores. Kenyon Drake also had a receiving touchdown. Remember, he had kind of disappeared.
That's true. Yeah, he got buried with Peyton Barber and Josh Jacobs' return. But everyone all the running backs contributing a little bit in their own ways. So good for the Raiders in that regard. And just the Broncos. Teddy had a great game, but despite 3 interceptions, take out the interceptions, he's got a great game.
I would say, he had 3 interceptions and then also lost a fumble, so 4 turnovers for him. But just throwing the ball around a lot because they were losing for the majority of this ball game. So 35 of 49, 334 yards and 3 touchdowns. Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick all had touchdowns in this ballgame. Fant and Sutton's touchdowns were both in garbage time.
Yeah.
So I know you're a Cortland Sutton owner, so you're definitely happy about some garbage time.
No, they've been the champion of garbage time touchdowns.
He's gotten one in back-to-back weeks now, and then the running backs continue to split carries. Javonte Williams, 14 touches, Melvin Gordon 13 touches. They both had 3 receptions, so just continuing to split work, and neither one of them is really separated in terms of the production.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice matchup between the Browns and the Broncos this week to really kind of gauge where this Broncos team is at and see where the Browns are heading.
Yeah, that's what we're getting to the point of the season, Stein, where 6 games in, I think you can kind of really start to judge teams, especially based on their record, of how real or fake they are. So both these teams started out 3-0 when we we were mentioning how it's like, oh, these might be some like fake 3-0 teams, or definitely like not as good as their record is showing. And so now the Broncos, with being 3-3 on the season, I think it's kind of definitely showing how they're definitely not that like upper tier, like potential AFC contender type team that they at least started out record wise to be.
Yeah. Bottom line, just a relatively inspired, because that was what I was wondering, if this Raiders team was going to be inspired or not, with the loss of Gruden.
Yeah.
So we're going to say they're relatively inspired. Raiders team
at least getting a victory. So.
Beats up on a divisional foe, and just a classic, just impose your will game.
Hey, and the Raiders still better record than the Chiefs overall in the division. So.
Right now, yeah, but they still are behind the.
They're tied with the Chargers.
Tied with the Chargers, and they haven't played each other. So, all right.
Yeah, let's move on to the next game, and that is the last 4:25 game. The Cowboys and the Patriots. Looked like it was going to be a blowout on paper, but then the ball game was once again one of the better ones that we had of the day since we had so many blowouts. The Cowboys ended up winning in overtime, 35-29. They moved to 5-1 on the season. The Patriots falling to 2-4. So for the Cowboys, just the offense once again was clicking. Dak did the damage with his arm, 36 of 51, 445 passing yards, 3 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Did suffer a calf strain on the game-winning touchdown to CeeDee Lamb in overtime. They're optimistic. They luckily have a bye this upcoming week, so they're optimistic that 2 weeks from now he'll be healthy enough to play in that ball game. But a great performance from him. The running backs were both great between Zeke and Pollard, combined for 27 carries, 110 yards, and then 10 catches for 72 yards. So decently productive in the opportunities that they had.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, kind of his after kind of a not a great start to his season, a coming out game, because last year he had a similar kind of game. 9 catches for 149 yards and 2 TDs. Great performance from him.
Yeah, and then, like I said, had that game-winning touchdown in overtime.
Yeah. Dalton Schultz looking good, 5 for 79 as a tight end. Amari Cooper, only 5 for 55. Pretty good. And then defensive side of the ball, Trayvon Diggs, another interception. This time a pick 6. Also a pass deflection and 5 tackles. I mean, guys just got to be the defensive player of the year, but
yeah, I was gonna say put it on there for right now. As he's got 7 interceptions through 6 games. The next best guy's got 3 interceptions. He's got a pick in every game this season.
He did get burned the next play, which I guess you're allowed to,
Yeah, that's what he had. The pick 6 late in the fourth quarter, and then the next play, Mac Jones double move from Kendrick Bourne, 75-yard touchdown down the field to end up tying the ball game up back again and sending it eventually to overtime. So, but still, yeah, Trayvon Diggs has been the best defensive player of the season, and as of right now, will definitely be the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, and a Dan Quinn defense. All right, for the Pats, Mac Jones was serviceable, 229.
Pretty much all you can say about Mac Jones every single week.
Yeah, who's been just kind of a
mad quarterback, a game manager,
for them, and What really is emerging for the Patriots, though, is Damian Harris kind of taking that lead back role. We weren't sure, what we were going to get.
He came in with a rib injury, so he ended up being active, had a 100-yard rushing performance, 18 for 101, and a touchdown. A good performance from him. Ramondre Stevenson also had a touchdown in the ballgame. The Patriots, of course, rotating in their running backs. And the pass catchers were just kind of
It was a mixed bag. I think the guy who had the most was like 4 or 5 catches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jacoby Myers still couldn't find his way into the end zone. Had a touchdown called back.
I know, that really hurt me.
But, yeah, Mac only threw the ball 21 times. So just the name of the game and the identity for the Patriots offense is just kind of rotating a couple of different running backs and really trying to control the clock.
Yeah.
But overall, just the Cowboys were able to come away in overtime and get the victory.
Yeah. Bottom line, this was a winnable game for both teams, as it did go into OT. Just seems like the Cowboys have had luck on their side all season.
Yeah, and it just stinks for the Patriots, because this would have been a huge win for them. They've been in a couple of games versus tough teams this season. Like, remember the Sunday night game with Brady and all the headlines?
Yeah,
like,
that was a tight game.
They were in that game against the Bucs,
and then they almost lay an egg against against the Texans. So it's like,
yeah. So there's been a bunch of winnable games for them, but they're kind of like the Vikings, where they've been in just about every single ball game, but just in this one not able to get it in the win column and fall to 2-4.
Yeah. finishing up with the primetime game, which is probably the one we watched the least amount of because we were at the Braves game.
We were at the Braves game. I watched the highlights of this ball game, but like I was saying when we talked about that Jaguars game, it pretty much the same. I mean, it finished with the same score, right? 23-20.
Yeah, exactly. And that one didn't go in overtime. This one actually did. And this one was like a 7-0 going into like 4 minutes left in the second quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking like a boring game.
Yeah, it was 14-0 Steelers at halftime, but the Seahawks able to battle back in the second half. They kicked a game tying field goal to force overtime in the ball game, and then both teams had a possession in overtime. But the big factor was the Steelers' defense. T.J. Watt getting a strip sack fumble, and the Steelers taking over inside the red zone, so they just kind of lined up the kick, and Boswell went straight through the uprights from about 35, 37 yards to end up winning the ball game.
Yeah. Big Ben, again, they have him throwing a bunch for another. Yeah, they have him throwing a bunch of times.
A very inefficient day.
Yeah, 229 yards on 40 passes, a touchdown, but a fumble and a bad fumble as he tried to tuck it and just couldn't keep it and just weirdly lost it. I don't even know what happened.
Yeah, that's what it was. The pump fake, and then the ball went straight down, and yeah, they didn't rule it with the tuck rule and everything. Said it was a fumble, but yeah, so just a bad fumble from Big Ben to try and sell out the pump fake.
More things to add to the lowlights of Big Ben this year. Najee Harris, again, just getting it done for the Steelers when they kind of need it thus far, despite a bad offensive line. 30 touches for 127 total scrimmage yards. Deontay Johnson was their best receiver, 9 for 71, also with a 25-yard rush.
Yeah, going back to Najee, I think the philosophy on him is like if you just give him the ball enough times, like he'll eventually just like break something free or will have a decent performance, at least as it looks on the stat line. So he's getting a crazy amount of opportunities, whether it's rushing or also being like a decent receiver out of the backfield as well, even more so with Juju not being out there, and so getting even more targets. But then, yeah, Deontay Johnson, 9 for 71. So once again, just getting peppered with targets underneath for the Steelers. On the Seahawks side, Geno Smith making his first start, and the first guy not named Russell Wilson to make a start in 9 years. He was 23 of 32, only 209 yards passing. Had a touchdown, and then also lost that fumble that I said with T.J. Watt, leading to the game-winning field goal in overtime. Alex Collins, who was filling in for Chris Carson, who went on IR with a neck injury, actually had a 100-yard rushing effort and only had like 20 or 30 rushing yards at halftime, but really was good in the second half. 20 carries, 101 yards, and a touchdown. But with Geno at quarterback, definitely a big hit to the Seahawks' top two receivers. DK only had 6 catches for 58 yards. Tyler Lockett only 2 catches for 35 yards.
Yeah, not this typical Seahawks offense that we were kind of hoping for. Again, stifled by a Steelers defense that played well and really played.
I mean, finished defense.
Finished down the stretch. So just looking good. I mean, but good to see Alex Collins kind of emerge. Smith, was decent, but he wasn't Russell Wilson. And there was even Russell Wilson was like practicing.
Yeah, apparently he was going through like a 2-minute drill, like without having to throw the ball or anything like that. So trying to I guess stay in shape for when he's able to come back.
He's gonna try to be back ASAP.
I was gonna say, this is new for him, the first time that he's ever missed a game in his career. So he probably didn't really know what to do with himself, but. Apparently they're not satisfied with Geno Smith in that performance because Pete Carroll said that they've reached out to Cam Newton. I think they're listening to maybe some phone calls to see if they can get a short-term replacement until Russell Wilson gets back.
Cam might have to get vaccinated.
Yeah, but I thought that was kind of interesting that they were listening to phone calls, even though Russ will be back later on this season. And then one last thing on the Seahawks offense, mentioned Alex Collins and his great performance. He actually missed some stuff late in the ball game, battling a glute and hip injury, so he's going to be questionable for next week. But some good news from the running back position. Rashad Penny should be able to come back.
Also heard Carson could be close to They upgraded him to day-to-day, I think.
Well, no, he got placed on IR, so
he did?
Yeah, he's got
I must have read Rashad Penny then as coming back.
One of the other Seahawks running backs. They got about 4 or 5
I got like 5 Seahawks notifications today for some reason, so
I did too. I don't know why, Pete Carroll, I guess, was the only guy that was doing press conferences or something today,
you would think.
There's a lot of notifications from the Seahawks front.
Bottom line from this one, just a boring game that turned more exciting. But beating a battered Seahawks team isn't that much of a accomplishment. Steelers. So
yeah, I mean the Steelers.
Let's pump the brakes.
Yeah, Steelers 3-3 this season, but I think in terms of like records wise, like Steelers and the Bears both being 3-3, it's very uninspiring 3-3.
Yeah, though I think the Steelers will destroy the Bears right now. I don't think the Steelers. I don't think they could get past. I think the Bengals would give them a good test, and yeah, but. I mean, it's the NFL. Any team, any week,
Yeah, exactly. But that's going to do it for Week 6. So looking at our records overall.
Just a
week
for me.
So, Stein, you were 14-2 last week. That was the best record for a week overall this season. I'm trying to beat that. I'm 12-1 right now in the week as we're filming during the Monday night game. We all have the Bills, so the Bills are up 20-17. They just kicked off to start the second half.
There's been some crazy injuries in this game, as we saw Taylor Lewan get carted off with a neck brace.
I saw it carted off.
There was another guy carted off, I think, for the Titans. Julio made a ridiculous catch or something. I don't know. This is going to be...
Jesus, like back-to-back primetime, because I'm pretty sure there's a couple guys carted off in the Seahawks-Steelers game.
Yeah, there was a guy, a
so.
linebacker for I think it was the Seahawks, who got carted off, who luckily was moving his extremities. I don't know what happened to Taylor Lewan. Hopefully he was... Because I think he was in a brace. I think he hit his head.
Well, like you said, if it was like a neck brace, that's definitely never a good sign when you're getting up in that area. But hopefully he's okay. But going back to the records, I'm 12-1 right now. Could be 13-1 if the Bills end up winning.
Yeah, 9-5 was the best I can do. I'm 8-5.
Mm-hmm. And then our Zach, our guest picker, at 7-6. Like we said, he had 4 or 5 games where he was the only guy that picked. One of the teams ended up working for him in some cases. Like he was the only guy that picked the Vikings, so definitely worked on that front. But probably the biggest one for him was picking the Lions over the Bengals was definitely what did him in. The one loss I had this week was a Vikings-Panthers game.
And that one could have came down. You almost could have had a perfect week. And for me, I was looking at that Jags game. Like, that was kind of my pick. I was like, how did you know the Jags were going to win? Last time you picked the Jags.
I had some inside intel with Urban Meyer. I got him on speed dial. But...
Yeah, you did some favors for him, huh?
Whoa. Let's
not those kind of favors.
I was going to say,
not those kind of favors.
I helped him out with whether
helped
or not
clear
to
his
go
PR.
for it.
Yeah, he helped his PR.
Yeah, I told him whether or not to go for it on 4th down. So.
Yeah. Well, guys, so we're gonna have our punishment next week.
Yeah,
next show. Excuse me.
That's what I proposed that Zach and Stein both do the punishment since they had such bad records, especially compared to my record. But we'll see.
We'll probably just end up being me.
We'll see. We'll at least have one person doing a punishment, so we'll definitely have that in our next show. One last piece of information. Like I said, we got 6 teams going into the upcoming buys. You got the Cowboys, Vikings, Bills, Jaguars, Chargers, and Steelers. So definitely be on the lookout for the waiver wire, picking up some guys to replace. A lot of guys that are going to be in your starting lineups that you have to replace. So we'll definitely have a waiver wire reel coming out of some guys
those are 3 quarterbacks that y'all are probably 3 quarterbacks, like 5 running backs that y'all are going to be missing. So that's definitely going to be.
This is like one of 2 big weeks in terms of having a lot of teams on bye. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm looking at those Bills, right? I'm looking at the Bills. I'm looking at the Cowboys and the Vikings, and I'm just like, who am I? I have guys from all over, on those.
I mean, besides the Jaguars, like all these teams are 500 or better. So definitely have some solid guys. But that's gonna do it for this episode. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram at The Couch Quarterbacks. I'm Andrew Roachford, Ben Steinberg right there, and